Good day, everybody, and good day, folks. Hope you're doing well. My name is David, and I'm your host of this legendary Deconstructing Topic Podcast. And we making it happen in this podcast. You already know it's called Deconstructing Topic Podcast. Could be talking about different things, different podcasts, different of a little bit of everything. You already know. I said, you already know. You got to hit the likes, the shares, the comments, all that. Today, we got an interesting show once again. Coming off binge watching on Netflix for the 10th time, the TV show Lost. Ooh, people gonna be like, Lost, wait a minute. I've heard of that show. I haven't seen that show yet. Ain't that an old show? It's a classic show. Yeah, it's old but classic. And today we kind of want to share my thoughts on the show. Since I've seen it, I mean, I was very fully invested when the show came out back then. Back in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm gonna say that because it's very endearing show to me, and it means a lot to me. This show, for many reasons, and I remember at that time when the show came out, or at least I remember the commercials, and I always say, "Wow, this show intrigues me." I want to watch it. The only thing is that I remember back then is that when I would come out. I would work, and where I worked at was like about an hour and a half away from where I live at. So sadly, by the time I get out in the night. By the time that I get out, let's say 9 o'clock kids or whatever Eastern time, Lost would be that show. And, I'm in the mindset now. Keep in mind this. We're talking about 20 years ago, 2004. We didn't have the stream thing going on. We didn't have a lot of that nonsense that I could remember at all. Obviously, nothing that we have now. Let's just put it that way. For those people of age that could remember, for those people who's not of age that might say, damn. So you guys actually sat down and watched a TV show when it came out? Like, you guys didn't stream it, binge watching, all like that? Like, nah. Even in 2004, even though TV, and it's funny because the show aired on ABC, and it's one of those things where, keep in mind, back then, a lot of these TV networks, the regular so-called TV channels, the ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, WB, whatever it is now, Universal, the other stuff, the other channels, the regular channels that you don't pay extra money to have, they were coming out with bangers, and that's where you go and watch the show now. You want to watch the show now, you want to watch a big show. Either you got to have Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, whatever streaming site or whatever thing that if you want to watch that big show, you got to watch this. But back then, it was just the regular TV networks. And in September of 2004 is when the show Lost hit the air. And sadly, I missed it. Now, why is this show very endearing to me? So, it aired on September of 2004. And I had my car accident in September 2005. Now, keep in mind, is that when the show at that time that I got in my car accident, even though we did not have the streaming channels or we didn't have all that stuff like the Netflix, whatever it is that it's on demand now, we had, how can I say, DVDs. Those DVDs, hey, they come in handy. You got to order them suckers and put them in a DVD player. At that time I didn't have a DVD player, but I had a PS2 that played DVD. Oh yeah, PlayStation 2, let's go. And I remember one night, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, or let's just say one morning, as I'm recovering from my car accident. I remember I ordered the season 1 on DVD, and I had it there for weeks and weeks, just because I was dealing with a lot of pain. And one morning, I decided, boom, let me start watching the show. And I kid you not, I was about to go to DVD too. Now, each DVD at that time had 4 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. And each episode of the show Lost were 40-something minutes. Now, keep in mind, with the DVD, you don't have commercials, so it was 40-something minutes or 40-something minutes of the show. When it's aired on TV, for the most part back then, it was an hour show, but we were talking about 17 minutes of commercials. And I'm watching this show. And I see this gentleman and the actor Matthew Fox playing Jack Shepard. with the eyes, and there's a plane accident and something chaos going on and so on. And I'm gonna try my best to kind of limit, or a matter of fact, if I say something that's gonna kind of blow it up and spoil it for you, I'm sorry. Watch the show. It's on Netflix now. The whole season, 6 seasons. Remember, lasted in 2004, 2010. And when I seen that show, and keep in mind that at that time, how can I say, the internet was the internet, but the internet was not as, how can I say, it's different. So in other words, YouTube was not a thing. Now YouTube, it's basically part of a lot of people's life. So back then, you wasn't as spoiled as to say, let me get on the internet and somebody spoil it for you. Now, because a lot of people do a lot of content, basically, like, let's say a show like Lost, if it was on now, you would have like hundreds of people who will go on YouTube and, either review whatever episode. So it was a different atmosphere. So even though I missed watching it live and sitting down season 1, I wasn't spoiled. I really wasn't knowing what to expect in the show. I heard great things about the show, and to me, in my opinion, arguably my favorite show of all time. Arguably, there's other shows, Game of Thrones, up there. Yeah, absolutely. Over here enjoying a little bit of some of that adult juice as I'm thinking about the show. It's very emotional. It's a good show. And just to give you like a little synopsis, there's a plane, the Oceanic 815 or Flight 815 or something to that effect. He lands somewhere in an island, which the island supposedly doesn't exist or exists, something to that effect. And you had 30 plus, 40 plus people there. And this is where I'm going to say that this show was one of those shows that even though it had a lot of characters, and sometimes sadly we did get lost in them, like, no pun intended, but it had a lot of great characters that you just say, wow. And me watching the show again, I'm like, damn, you had actors like, we talking about killers, good actors. And, for those people, remember the shows, you had Jack, which is the main guy. I mean, the story supposedly that he was going to get killed off. But for some reason, Jack, the doctor, gravitated. You had Kate. Again, I'm not going to try to spoil it, but for those people that watch it, Echo, you had Desmond, obviously Locke, central part of the show from day one. Ben, Saeed. Ben was an interesting story. Hurley. You had Rose Bernard. I mean, we could go on and on. Ana Lucia, played by... Ana Lucia was playing... I can't believe that I had a Michelle Rodriguez, the famous... actress Michelle Rodriguez. She came on that show. That's a lot of people came on this show, whether it's for episode 2 and you'd be like, oh, the world, they were there. Sawyer is another character. So these are the characters, Sun, Jen, Libby. These are the characters that play. And sadly, a lot of people in that show lost their lives. Again, no pun intended. And when I popped in that DVD and I was watching episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. And keep in mind, I started at 3 o'clock in the morning. That means it's dark. And I kid you not, I popped DVD number 2. Now, the show, the first season, I believe it consists of 16 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of episodes, I believe that 121 episodes altogether. And the thing is that with this show, because they had different characters, and I think that somebody had mentioned that, even though they had supposedly the show did have some main characters, but my understanding is that there's not one single character or actor that played in all the season, because it told different stories of different people and how they got to the island. I'm telling you, the show is like, gotta watch it, because it's one of those shows where you just say to yourself, what? And I don't remember back then, and even watching TV in the 90s, that I could remember. I know that in the 80s, there were shows that, how can I say, that people remember. There was a show called Sent Elsewhere, which is one where there's the premise is that there's a hospital and so on, and at the end of the day, when the shows ended, the characters that were in that hospital was actually an imaginary story of this kid that had autism. And when the show ended, the hospital was inside this snow globe. So it was in his imagination that the show took place. And that's very interesting. So, you might have once in a while back then, but in 2004, I don't remember a show where it had something where you'd be like, almost every episode, like, huh? Unless you like those novelas, in Univision, Telemundo, ABC, the General Hospitals, all that, Maria, all that, by all means. But it was just one of those shows that you just say, wow, like, what is going on? So the show was created by Jeffrey Lieber and J.J. Abrams and Dan Lindelof. So you had a little couple of J.J. Abrams. A lot of people who are familiar with J.J. does the Star Wars thing now and so on. And it was a captivating show. And it was addicted. And I remember recovering from my injury, my car accident just dropped. Like, I just couldn't wait. I'm like, I want to see this show again. Pop DVD number 3. I said, hold on. Let me take a perk. Let me go to sleep. Because I think I'm not going to sleep watching this show. And I think I went all the way to the second DVD, which, and again, 4 more episodes. I was started to rewatch it with my brother. And my brother was like, oh, snap. I mean, he used the word snap. Used another word, but he's like, oh, snap. What? And there's different scenes. If you remember Kate, where to find out that Kate, again, I don't want to spoil it, but you know what it is, what it is. But Kate is a beautiful, played by Angelique Lilly. And Kate was like this heroic person in the island, doing this, doing that, helping, to find out that she was a fugitive or a felon or something like that. And when she was in the plane, she was actually being led by a marshal. So the plane, just to give you an idea, the plane was supposed to take off from, what is it? So it's from Australia to Los Angeles or something to that effect. And somewhere down the line, if I'm not mistaken, Los Angeles, Sydney, there's a connection there. Or vice versa, from Los Angeles to Sydney. And somewhere it got lost and boom. And the show had so many integral parts of it. Again, so many different characters. And I'm going to say that the first 2 seasons of Lost, once I finished watching on DVD, then I was able to catch up once it went live on season 2. Because there was time in between season 1 and season 2. I mean, season 2 actually started a year later, which it was September. Matter of fact, season 2 started like about a week before my car accident. So when I was in my car accident, I caught up on season 1, and then I was able to catch up on season 2 because they did reruns, whatever, something to that effect. So, and ever since then, I was just watching the show religiously. The show sometimes were on Tuesdays, 9 o'clock. I know that it made some changes, but I still was able to watch it. And I remember because to me, I invested in this show. My last episode, I decided to go to this bar place that they were doing the last kind of episode. And I had a good time here in New York City, somewhere Bowery, around the area, Chinatown, so on, and had a good time. The only bad thing, you're surrounded by hundreds of people, and I wasn't able to captivate that ending of the show TV, the Lost. And it's going to be a little bit controversial, but for some reason, Lost ended in some type of, how can I say, some people felt disappointed, some people felt lost. I mean, I guess that's the premise of the show. And I rewatched the show once again, and my understanding, and I go back to some of these YouTube people that think YouTube creating, to kind of give you an idea of things that you missed, things that you didn't captivate, because the show was that captivating. But sometimes it was lost. And in the first 2-3 seasons, it was one of the best shows. By the season 3, it was a banger. But somewhere, season 4 and 5, they started losing millions of people. My understanding that there was some type of writer's strike. So basically, when that ended or something to that effect, that there were writers that were just rushing just to get the show going. They filmed the show in Hawaii. So obviously, there was a lot of stuff going on there. And it ended on May 23rd, the last episode, 2010. So 20 years ago, I'm telling you, this is one of those shows where I think that even it was so popular that Even people spoke about it openly. It was what they call one of those first shows where you are doing what they call the water cooler talk. And for those who are familiar with the water cooler talk, for those who have been in space where there's an office, there's a water cooler. And basically that water cooler, every time that somebody is thirsty, they go and get some water. But you always find somebody also getting water, kind of like start talking about football. Like, hey, what's going on with your kids? Oh, you saw this show, because, we're going to get water in the water cooler is basically you taking a break from your work, getting water. But sometimes you do the chit chat, And it's one of those shows that people, the podcast, a lot of people did the podcast. There was a couple of podcasts that I subscribed to. There was a main one that talked about the show and leading on to the ending of the show or to the last season. There was a lot of theories. That's another show too, where even if you're not in the conspiracy theory and you didn't put that tinfoil hat, this show made you put that tinfoil hat. You had a lot of characters, the Man in Black, for those, Jacob, for those remember. And I'm telling you, it was great storytelling. Again, I did get a little bit lost. And again, the ending was more like, oh, so they all die, but just not at the same time? Okay. And they all, my understanding, the characters, they all die in a sense in a show because, again, the show had a tendency and one of the part of the show is going back in story, back in timeline, back and forth, the future. It's one of those things where the past, the future, and the present is all happening all at once. So you kind of get lost because sometimes you do remember someone getting shot, dying, a bomb exploding, dying. So basically, in the premise of the show, I believe you had Kate when one of the episodes that she got shot. Now, my understanding that if she would have died, but it showed that she survived the shot, or at least she survived, whatever it is. So it could have been that she died, but we just saw something different. So that's where it threw a lot of people kind of off where, okay, I'm lost. Because of the understanding is that when they all gather at the end, and again, a lot of endings of these TV shows, whether it's The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, I mean, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to satisfy what exactly it is that is a good ending. You know what I'm saying? Now, for some reason, there's a couple of things here about the show is that, hey, listen, I wish they made a movie. Somewhere, let them magically come back to the island and something incredible happen. I personally think. Now that it's having on Netflix, maybe somebody will make, put some investment. I know that a lot of these actresses are, older or whatnot. I think some might have passed away, if I'm not mistaken. But, something. Now, if, and only if, I was thinking, and this is my thing, my opinion, I definitely would have done the ending different, right? And I would have the ending where everybody goes back to the island because for some reason, the island was the one that caused them. And I'm going to say is this. You want to kill off everybody? It's going to sound a little crazy. I hate to kind of think a little crazy, but I'm just thinking, what if the island was created by the United States, right? As this crazy kind of experiment gone wrong and the island had its own life that it ran broke. I'm just saying here. Had all these people, important people, all these people that was in the show lost, go back to the island and have the last episode. Either you could do a couple of things here. And again, this is just me. Either once the United States government finds out that the island is there and the location of the island, because my understanding the island, there's no exact location. For those who are there, maybe I'm lost to understand that, or it does have a location, but sometimes it disappears. So everybody, and I'm thinking here, in that island, there's a big plane coming, and that big plane happened to have a nice little bomb to drop and just make the island, just destroy the island forever. Wow. That's my thing. That's what I would think. I could imagine like the survivors of the island just seeing that plane like, oh my goodness, is this it? Are they going to do it? Or leave it on a climax where maybe the island would have just devoured the plane. Something different, something crazy. And I think, in my opinion, if you're going to kill off the characters because they were dead already, because, yeah, it did leave people like, oh, my goodness, so they were dead all along? I don't get it. So when did they die? Because basically that's the questions. And, in the finale, that's what happened. You had Jack's father come out and say, yeah, listen, eventually everybody dies somewhere, somehow, and they all built a church where they could get together and just say, you know what, we move on. Let's move on. But if you're going to do that, that's what I say. Do it on some like, okay, these people went through timelines and whatever the case might be, just put them once again back on the island. And have that plane or planes or whatever coming down and just have, I could see Jack in his eyes, Kate, they have tears and like, oh my goodness. And you have the pilots of the plane, it's like, okay, we got the target. It's time to destroy the island. And then boom. Either you show the rockets coming in and you leave it in that suspense that you don't see that the island is destroyed, or you could, leave it to the imagination of maybe the island in itself decided, you know what, let me protect these people. And there's some magically struck lightning on these planes and boom. Like, you ain't going to touch my people here. I'm just saying, it could have gone so many different ways, but sadly, again, we all left with kind of like a life lesson in a sense. And a lot of people kind of like, they ain't like the ending. And again, it's not easy to satisfy. I know I'm ranting about the ending because it's a little frustrating because it's a great show. It's a great, beautiful show. It's a great show and I love it. But just like many great shows, and this happened with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, left a lot of people like, what, really? Towards the end, I'm talking about, a lot of people were feeling a little bit unsatisfied. But you see the difference between Game of Thrones. You said there's all the other stories because, Game of Thrones is just a different, based on a book, based on a different world created by somebody. The laws were just laws, you know what I mean? Can't think of any other entity. I know that they made a video game and they made a YouTube little thing going on with Hurley and Ben. So, so there's not really much. So at the end, what I'm trying to say is this, is that with Game of Thrones, they at least made it up with the House of Dragon. Well, the House of Dragon is a great show. I'm loving House of Dragon. And I'm feeling it more than Game of Thrones because now I know what about the characters, about the story. I was a little bit familiar with the books of Game of Thrones, but never read them, obviously. So when the show came on, it's like, okay, let's see. It's like so many Lord of the Rings, you already know. Any of these big adventures based on a book, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to do. So Lost, does it have another run? It was supposed to be in the 20-year anniversary. So sadly, if there was any talks, and I haven't heard of making a movie, maybe I might have heard something years ago. Sadly, it's one of those shows where we got what we got. And that's about it. Whether we like it or not, we got what we got. There's no more of, another Lost, maybe perhaps in the future. With different characters, who knows? It's going to be definitely hard to top that show Lost. If they come out with another Lost, I wouldn't mind watching it. And ended because a show like that, like Lost, it's a little bit difficult to rate. Because what else can this happen? And it's funny because as I'm watching season 1, and it took you to an emotional roller coaster where you said to yourself, wow, what can you do? It's like, okay, a plane crash in the island, boom, you got a lot of people lost, a lot of stories here and there. It goes back and forth outside of the island, sidewalk, whatever it is. And there were times, even on season 1, you could say like, okay, what more can you do? I mean, and that's where the show did a great job in terms of going into these timeline or going to what they call flashbacks, where it shows those people that are on the island, they were who their story was back into whatever, whether it's United States, Saudi in Iraq, there's other people in other countries. And you said to yourself, wow, how everything is connected in life and everything connected in the show Lost. And every time I'm watching an episode, I'm like, damn, what more can you do? And then the next episode hits you with a bang, and you be like, okay. And I remember when season 2 started, you remember the hatch, you remember all that good stuff. Oh my goodness, so much to talk about. But that's that show. Oof, I love that show. Previously on Lost. But we're making it happen. Hope you enjoy. Let me know what you think about the show. Is there a show out there that captivated you like Lost did? If you haven't seen Lost, feel free to go out there. It's on Netflix now and binge watch it, especially here in the United States. You might have a little bit of time in Christmas, New Year's Day. Go out there. Watch this show. I highly recommend it. Deconstructing Topics recommended. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make another podcast or part 2 of this because there's so much to take. I love the show, Lost, and it was very endearing. A time that I was recovering from a car accident, this was that show. This was that show that I sat there and watched my broken left foot, eating some popcorn, whatever I was munching on. But we making it happen. I'm out of here. You already know. Much love out there, and I'm out of here. Feel free to share. Let's make it happen.